Again. I'm Rabbi Dr. Joseph Rosenfarb of Bethlehem Synagogue here in Tidewater in Norfolk, Virginia. And I welcome you to our study on Wednesday nights, the book of Acts through Jewish eyes. And so I had a coughing session last week, so I have my handy water ready today. Thanks for joining us. Our congregation meets at the Crossroads Church in Norfolk. That's Saturday mornings at 9:30, and that's for the Torah study for Rabbi Derek Blumenthal teaches that. And then 10:30 we have our service, and then we have our own egg, a time of refreshment. We invite you to come and eat with us and fellowship with us, get to know us. And then there are a number of sessions in the afternoon for the teens, for dance, for various teachings. And then, of course, Wednesday evening, we have our Wednesday evening Bible study at 7 o'clock. We've been meeting remotely, but down the road, we hope to get back to meeting in person there. It's an exciting time for us. We have put a bid on, and it was accepted for a new building, and that'll be in Norfolk as well. And it's going to be exciting to see the thing grow and expand. So anyway, God, thank you for your word, and just bless it to our hearts in a way that would connect with our faith as we believe what you're saying. And then your grace will attach to what we believe, that it will transform us to look like you more and more and more. And the old will come off and the new will come on. Thank you so much for completing the work through Messiah. We bless you in Yeshua's name. Well, we have been talking about Acts chapter 23. That's about where we started, 23, 27. And we've got a commander here, Claudius Lysis, and he is wanting to talk to the governor and present Rabbi Paul to the governor Felix. He's the governor of Judea at this time. Judea is a Roman province, of course. And so he writes this letter, and we're going to continue with this letter in verse 27. This man was seized upon by the Judeans and was about to be killed by them when I came upon them with the soldiers and rescued him, having learned that he was a Roman citizen. We've talked much about that, how Roman citizens had extra rights, the right to a trial, the right to hear your accusations, the right to respond to it, and so forth, whereas a non-citizen would not have that access. And desiring to know the charge for which they were accusing him, I brought him down to their council. I found that he was being accused about questions of their law, but charged with nothing deserving death or imprisonment, i.e., Roman law. And when it was disclosed to me that there would be a plot against the man, I sent him to you at once, ordering his accusers also to state before you what they have said against him. So we see the body of the letter summarizes all the events. He stretches the truth a little bit here for his own benefit, claiming to have rescued Paul from the mob, right? Because he learned that he was a Roman citizen. And he omitted any reference to the proposed flogging. Did you notice? I think we mentioned that last time. So, okay, we understand that. Most important in the letter is that his evaluation of the Jewish opposition to Rabbi Saul. I found that the accusation had to do with questions about their law, but there was no charge against him that deserved death or imprisonment. That was of great consequence and significance to Paul, and also for Luke and for his purposes of forwarding the good news. So, verse 31, so the soldiers, according to their instructions, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. And on the next day, they returned to their barracks, letting the horsemen go on with him. And so Luke writes, and so the men were go on their way. You feel that Luke has a bit of relief that this thing is moving on beyond Paul being killed, really. And on the next day, they returned to the barracks, letting the horsemen go on with him. And they go to Antipatris. This is a town built by Herod the Great. Herod the Great was a tremendous builder, a lunatic, but in terms of an architect and builder, magnificent. And he built the city in honor of his father Antipater. We don't know exactly where it was, maybe some 25 miles northwest of Jerusalem in the Judean hills. We're not quite sure. At any rate, the mission was supposed to produce safety and speed. The conspirators are left far behind. The ambush is gone. The infantry turns back to Jerusalem, and the cavalry takes Paul to Caesarea, which is about 40 miles away. No small distance. And then we come to verse 33 of chapter 23. And when they had come to Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor, they presented Paul also before him. On reading the letter, he asked what province he was from. And when he learned that he was from Cilicia, he said, I will give you a hearing when your accusers arrive. And he commanded him to be guarded in Herod's praetorium. So here he is. He's turning, the commander's turning the prisoner over to Felix. He questions Paul a little bit on the contents here. He learns from Paul that he's from the Roman province of Cilicia, and he felt like, as the provincial governor, he could hear the case for himself when the accusers arrived from Jerusalem. He's kept under guard, and there, and so now this is the governor's headquarters, and there's the place of prisoners there on the property as well. So we turn our attention then in chapter 24 to Paul's defense before the governor, Felix. Luke is going to give the same space to one, the Jewish charges against Rabbi Saul, Paul's reply, and Felix's response. Messianically, this has nothing to do with political sedition. We're going to find Jewish oppositions to the new movement springs from a messianic claim to legitimate fulfillment of the hopes of Judaism. That's Paul's argument. So let's shift, shall we, to chapter 24 and verse 1. And after 5 days, the high priest Ananias came down with some elders and a spokesperson, one Tertullus, and they laid before the governor their case against Paul. So Paul arrives, they arrive 5 days later. Again, times are this little word, this Greek word meta, is used, in fact, to give an approximate time. It could be 5 days, it could be 7 days, it could be 12 days, right? But okay, so no more than 12 days, basically. I went to Jerusalem to worship. That's what he's meaning, really. It's 5 days reckoned from Paul's arrest in the temple. Whether that's the last day of the 7 days of purification, which I suspect. So 7 and 5 is 12. All right. Okay, but anyway, I'm just telling you these little Greek particles here are they are indeterminate. They're not exact. All right. So here's Tertullus. It's a common Greek name, probably Hellenistic Jew chosen by Ananias because of his expertise in this in the affairs of the empire and his allegiance to Judaism. He felt confident in Felix that he had a governor that he could manipulate for his own purposes. Antonius Felix, who is he? He's born a slave. He's freed by Antonia, the mother of the Emperor Claudius. He was the brother of one Pallas, who was a freedman also from Antonia, and he became a good friend to the young Prince Claudius in the imperial household. It's always good to know somebody. that's, that's kind of the moral here. Through the influence of his brother Pallas in CE 48, Felix was appointed to a subordinate government post in Samaria. And in 52, Claudius appointed him the governor of Judea when the previous governor, as was all too often the case, was deposed. And this was usually an office that was reserved for freemen of the Roman equestrian order, an elite order, if you will. And we get some of this information from Tacitus, well-known historian, 56 CE to 118 CE, and went through lived through a number of emperors and had a number of titles and so forth. All right, so during his governorship, there were lots and lots of insurrections, and there was lots of anarchy throughout Israel. So try as he would to put these things down, he could not put them down. He used very harsh methods, and it only alienated him from the Jewish population more and more, and led to more disturbances. Tacitus, whom I just mentioned, describes him as a master of cruelty and lust, who exercised the power of the king with the spirit of a slave. That's not a compliment, right? Despite his low birth, Felix had a succession of three wives. Each in their own right was a princess. This is from the historian Suetonius, where we get a lot of our first century information. As in fact, Suetonius and Tacitus are two of the early historians that mention Yeshua outside of the scriptures. So the first wife was the granddaughter of Antony and Cleopatra. So this makes Felix the grandson-in-law, if you will, of Antony. All right, so that gives him some standing, right? The third wife was one Drusilla, the youngest daughter of Agrippa the First. He was unhappy. She was unhappy as the wife, the wife of her husband, and through the intervention of a magician named Adamus, and again this is according to Josephus, she was induced to leave her husband for him. Nero calls Felix back to Rome sometime during 59 CE, and then nothing more is known of him. But clearly he's a man that's involved in intrigue. He's not a competent leader in terms of how to manage the problems, the insurrections of his own territory. You know, Rome doesn't like that, right? It's one of the couple of things that Rome won't tolerate. So verse 2, and when he had been summoned, Tertullus began to accuse him, saying, since through you we enjoyed much peace, and since by your foresight, O most excellent Felix, you see what's happening here. This is the normal flattering of the lawyer to the judge, so to speak. O most excellent Felix, reforms are being made for this nation, and in every way and everywhere we accept this with all gratitude. But to detain you no further, I beg you in your kindness to hear us. So he begins with flattery. He is the mouthpiece for the high priest. I think a lot of Judeans and a lot of Jewish people in general would be shocked at hearing this kind of person, this kind of slick lawyer, being the mouthpiece for Ananias. The long period of peace, the reforms We don't, they're certainly not there. All we saw during his reign was ferocity, greed, and cruelty. But he knows how to appeal to Felix's vanity. It's customary to offer brevity. But in order to not make a long speech, since much time has elapsed already, I will begin with the. This is one Lucian, and it's just an example from Roman literature of how these things proceed. So the New Covenant gives us a very accurate picture of how one would proceed, and therefore something that we consider credible. It's credible because we believe it's the Word of God, but it's also credible that it's quite genuine and quite right regarding the form of the day. Verse 5, for we have found this man a plague, one who stirs up riots. Oh, that's going to get Felix's attention. Among all the Jews around all the world, and is a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. He even tried to profane the temple, but we seized him. By examining him yourself, you will be able to find out about him everything of which we accuse him. The Judeans also joined into the charge, affirming that all these things were true. Of course, it's a setup. What's the three charges? We have just read them, right? He wants to create the impression of a political sedition against Rome. Oh, this guy's a troublemaker for Rome. Okay, disturbing the peace among the Jewish people, being a ringleader for the Nazarenes. He attempts to desecrate the temple. What more do you need? And so we know historically from Josephus that Felix repeatedly crucified leaders of that's my dog wants my attention, but he's going to have to wait till after the Bible study. You're going to have to wait, Gracie. I'm sorry. All right. And he killed many of their followers as well for disturbing what was called Pax Romana, the peace of Rome, right? His endeavor, Tertullus' endeavor, was supported by the high priest and the other Jewish elders. And their idea was to put Rabbi Saul, on the same level as brigands. And so Felix hopefully would act in his usual manner and on the basis of the testimony, kind of like the expectation of Yeshua when Yeshua was before Pilate in Luke 23. Verse 10. And when the governor had nodded to him to speak, Paul replied, knowing that for many years you have been a judge over this nation, I cheerily make my defense. So what he also offers a complimentary statement. It's briefer and it's truer. Felix had been in contact with the Jewish nation in Israel for over a decade, first in Samaria, as I said before, and then as a governor over the entire province of Judea. Remember Claudius getting in that position. So Paul's pleased to make his defense. Felix is in the know. He's going to understand the words in their context. So he continues, verse 11. You can verify that it is very clever, that it is not more, than 12 days. There's our 7 days of purification plus 5. It's not more than 12 days since I went up to worship in Jerusalem, and they did not find me disputing with anyone or stirring up a crowd, either in the temple or in the synagogues or in the city. Neither can they prove to you what they now bring up against me. So Paul's dealing with each thing in turn. First of all, I didn't have time to stir up anything. It's been 12 days. You need time to get people together and stir them up. And I didn't have the time. It's too short a time, right, to foment a revolt. Second of all, his accusers could hardly charge him with being a ringleader of any sedition, because he was alone where were his disciples? Where were his many followers when they arrested him in the temple? They couldn't cite any time when he was stirring up a crowd anywhere in the city. He certainly didn't have a lot of people around him, or they would have been arrested too. So he was the only one arrested. That's all right. Okay. Verse 11. No, we did this. We did this. Yeah. All right. Sorry, I'm losing my place a little bit more. Okay, we just did 13. Okay. So now we want to do 14 through 16. Right? But this I confess to you that according to the way, literally the halakha, but translated from Greek to our English, the way, according to the halakha, the new halakha, the new way to walk, the new way to live, which they call a sect. And I worship the God of our fathers, believing everything laid down by the law and written in the prophets, having a hope in God, which these men themselves accept, that there will be a resurrection of both the just and the unjust. So I always take pains to have a clear conscience before both God and man. So what was the real reason? The real reason why he was arrested, Paul is saying it's religious. I worship God. I believe in the same hope as they believe. What's different is I have accepted the way, and they haven't accepted the way, the new halakha, the new way to walk, the new way to live. But in himself accepting the new way, his conscience is clear before God and man. He's done no harm since he's believed this to God, to his kingdom, nor to his fellow human beings, right? Nor to the law and the prophets. I have the same hope that they have, right? But okay, so now verse 17. Now, after several years, I came to bring alms to my nation and to present offerings. So he's reconstructing for Felix what happened in Jerusalem. Look, I didn't come there to foment any kind of rebellion. I didn't come there to stir anybody up. I came with gifts for my nation and for the people of the way. Paul spoke of coming to Jerusalem to bring my people for my nation gifts to the poor and present offerings for worship. Well, the offerings for worship included the price, that is, the offerings required for him to do what? To fulfill and to stop the Nazirite vows. That was the way to do it. And so poor believers in Jerusalem and poor believers among the sect of the way. It was my mission to be a blessing to them. That's the reason I came back. I didn't come back for any negative reason towards my people or negative reason towards the leadership, nor negative reason towards Rome, right? I came back to bring something good. All right. Verse 18 through 21. While I was doing this, they found me purified in the temple without any crowd or tumult, right? Purifying because of the days of purification required to fulfill and therefore nullify a Nazirite vow. Without any crowd or tumult. But some Jews from Asia, they ought to be here before you to make an accusation, should they have anything against me. Or else let these men themselves say what wrongdoing they found when I stood before the council. They traveled all the way to Asia to make trouble for me because I was successful in those areas. Other than this one thing that I cried out while standing among them, it is with respect to the resurrection of the dead that I'm called on trial before you this day. He continues his summary of his arrest. No crowd, no attempt to create a disturbance. Asian Jews instigated the riot. If they had a charge against me, where are they? Why aren't they here right now? The disappearance of the accusers should mean the withdrawal of the charge. Their absence means they have nothing against me. that would stand up in a court of law, nor did the Sanhedrin, right? There's no crime except that I believe in the resurrection of the dead. Therefore, Paul declares that he's on trial for something within the Jewish context, the resurrection of the dead. Verse 22. But Felix, having a rather way, the new way, put them off, saying, when Lysis the tribune comes down, I will decide your case. Then he gave orders to the centurion that he should be kept in custody, but have some liberty, and that none of his friends should be prevented from attending to his needs. So basically, Felix seems to have figured it out, and he was acquainted with the way as much as he could be. He saw the Jewish charges were entirely religious. They pretended to be political, but he saw through that. Clearly, these were meant to look political. The lawyer Ananias, lawyer, made a case for that, but I see it. It's nonsense, right? It is. Well, he's basically removing the contest between the accusers and Paul. He's a Roman citizen. He's to be allowed some freedom. As a Roman citizen, he's allowed visits from friends to care for his needs. Um, Basically, it's clear Felix and Ananias and the lawyer, they realize that Felix has no intention of bringing this case to a decision in the near future, and they decide to await the appointment of a new political governor. And so anyway, apparently there's reason to believe that they will expect that to happen. 24. After some days, Felix came down with his wife Drusilla, who was Jewish, and he sent for Paul and heard him speak about faith in the Messiah Yeshua. And as he reasoned about righteousness and self-control and the coming judgment, Felix was alarmed and said, go away for the present. When I get an opportunity, I will summon you. At the same time, he hoped that money would be given to him by Paul, so he sent for him often and conversed with him often. He was hoping to get a little bribe out of Paul. So he conjured him up quite a lot in hopes that he would get some money through him, through his family. The text has mentioned his family, his friends. He was able to collect significant monies for Jerusalem, for the people of Israel, for the believers there. So he expects maybe I can get some. Ironically, his greed is what protects Paul from the Judean leadership and from being harmed, right? So they put Paul in protective custody. It's unbelievable. All right. Drusilla, Felix's third wife, youngest daughter of Herod Agrippa the first. As I said, she's broken off her marriage from her former husband because of Felix, and she was very, very beautiful, and she was very, very ambitious. So she accepts his offer of marriage. It didn't matter that he was a slave and bought his way in. It didn't matter about his Roman paganism. Didn't matter of Jewish scruples. That didn't deter her, right? She figured a higher station in life is what I want, and that's what I'm going to get. So the relationship between Felix and his young wife was clear: greed, lust, and expectations of grandeur. And they had some qualms of conscience, protected Paul, but Felix's overall goal was to profit by it. Paul speaks to Felix and his wife about the necessity of faith in the Messiah. He makes it plain that this involves an ethical life. And I'm sure that went over very big. You have to have some kind of an ethical life here. And he spoke of righteousness, self-control. and the judgment to come. And then Felix gets really antsy. Did you notice that? Sends him away. Doesn't want to hear any of that because he's just the opposite. His life is just the opposite. If judgment is to come, he's not going to have a favorable outcome. So these three subjects, Paul felt that Felix and Drusilla needed to learn about these things. But Drusilla clearly is offended by the moralistic ranting. Felix is unhappy at the shift of the discussion. But Luke says he was afraid. Emphobos, right? Emphobos with the preposition means he was terrified. Okay? So this struck a nerve in Felix, right? But anyway, his need for Paul and a bribe was much larger. He hoped to get his hands on some of the monies from friends who visited him and gave him some money, maybe to buy some things he needed. Verse 27, when 2 years had elapsed, Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus, and desiring to do the Judeans a favor, Felix left Paul in prison. So 2 years go by, and Festus is replaced as the leaders, the Judean leaders had hoped, replaced Felix as the governor of Judea. Felix's downfall was what? Because of the outbreaks of hostility between Jews and Greeks. The Jews claimed civil rights. The Greeks claimed civil rights. The Jews said, we have greater numbers and wealth. Herod the Great was a Jew. He rebuilt the city. The Greeks said, no, they've always had the support of the military. And because they claimed the city was always meant to be a Gentile city. We read that it's not here in the text. It's in Josephus. That's why sometimes reading extra biblical material can kind of help us to understand really the backdrop of this. Felix is gone because he can't manage these controversies. So Felix takes Syrian troops. He takes military action against the Jews. Many are killed. Many are taken prisoner. He steals their wealth, and a delegation goes to Rome to complain. And Felix is recalled, and he would have been in real trouble physically. But his brother intercedes before Nero, and Felix is replaced. We don't know exactly what happened to Felix after that. I think I've mentioned that before. All right. So many believe that this was the draft, that this was Luke's draft of the gospel era. I think it's just speculation. We're just not sure. And it's not worth for me to go into that because the arguments are kind of circular, and it's not really germane to what we're studying. If there was some clear evidence, I would discuss it with you. So now in chapter 25, we have this defense before Festus. It's very brief. There's 5 defenses in all, but this one is very, very brief. He appeals to Caesar, and that changes the whole story. Acts chapter 25 and verse 1. Now, 3 days after Festus had arrived in the province, he went up to Jerusalem from Caesarea, 40 miles approximately. Jewish population Festus was a welcome replacement for Felix. He was better. He was better than the previous corrupted, greedy leaders. Nothing is known about Festus really before his governorship here, so I can't give you much. We don't quite know the time of his nomination. Maybe he ruled approximately 60. That's a good guess, 60 CE. And here's all the troubles and all of the tensions that were there during Felix's administration. And this culminated in the first rebellion, 66 CE, of the Jewish people against Rome, as we read in Josephus. He dies in 62, so his reign is cut short. The situation in Israel is dire, and something has to be done. Festus took only 3 days to settle in Caesarea before going up to Jerusalem to meet with the leaders of the nation. Verse 2, there the head of the priests and the Judean leaders informed him of the case against Shaul. And they asked him, I'll go on. The high priest was Ishmael at this time. Herod Agrippa II appointed him to succeed Ananias. The Talmud says that he served as high priest for 10 years, and that he was replaced with Joseph, the son of Simeon, by Agrippa II. During Festus's rule, which was short, there was a big dispute, according to Jewish sources, over a wall that was erected to block the king's view of the temple. Okay, I mean, it's a big thing to the priesthood here. Ananias, however, continued to exercise dominant control. Usually, the older high priests were there in a advisory. They were called high priests too. There were a number of high priests that way, but because of his previous power, he had tremendous influence over adjudications and the direction of the priesthood and of the government. All right. Ananias dies in 66 CE. Luke speaks of the chief priests, not just the high priest Ishmael, as appearing before him with the elders. And I've mentioned that to you, how that would be true. All right. So the Jewish authorities are urging Festus to transfer Paul's case to Jerusalem. They did this in order to ambush him and murder him. All right. Now, I'm sure there were mixed emotions. Some probably felt, no, we've got to get rid of this guy. This guy is really he's causing religious chaos and pointing our people in the wrong direction. Others knew that it was just a jealousy problem, that the Messianic Jews were increasing dramatically, and they wanted to put a stop to all of this. So there's mixed motivations, but the main charge that they want to bring him back to Jerusalem for is this charge. Remember, he was charged as being that Egyptian guy, who clearly he wasn't, who brought a Gentile into the temple arena, and therefore could be killed. And they wanted him to be killed in a Roman court. And up to now, the Roman courts and adjudicators have been very reluctant to adjudicate on an issue regarding Jewish law. So verse 4, Festus replied that Paul was being kept at Caesarea and that he himself intended to go there shortly. So he said, let the men of authority among you go down with me. And if there's anything wrong with this about the man, let him bring charges against him. So unwittingly, Festus overturns their plans. And the dominoes are going down one by one to preserve Paul's life. And so verse 6. After staying with them for almost 8 or 10 days, Festus went down to Caesarea. And on the following day, he took his seat in the court and ordered Shaul to be brought in. When he arrived, the Judeans who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him, bringing many serious charges against him, which they could not prove. In reply, Shaul said, I have committed no offense, not against the Torah, to which the Jews hold, not against the temple, and not against Caesar or the emperor, right? So it convenes the court, but the witnesses are just not there. They can't prove their case, right? So yeah. Then Festus, when he had conferred with his council, answered, "To Caesar you have appealed; to Caesar you will go." So he says, "Okay, I'm going to turn this over to a higher authority." Everybody seems to want to get rid of poor Paul, but in wanting to get rid of him, they take him from Jerusalem to Caesarea and then to Rome, and to further his goal of being in Rome, and they're paying for it. How about that? To Caesar you have appealed; to Caesar you shall go. So he had to determine the charges, whether they were within his jurisdiction or beyond his jurisdiction, whether it was just to acquit the prisoner, right, or not to acquit him. They concerned political sedition, which in Roman law could be punished by death, but Festus had to get some extra information. Okay? Or he could be liable for violating Roman law by not doing due diligence and persecuting a Roman citizen without the proper procedure. All right. Festus consults now with Herod Agrippa II. Now, when some days passed, verse 13, Agrippa the king and Bernice arrived at Caesarea and greeted Festus. Marcus Julius Agrippa II, who was son of Agrippa I, the grandson of Aristobulus. You might remember in the first century CE, it was under Aristobulus, who was a weak leader, that really didn't have that much power, that the power for capital punishment was removed. The Talmud tells us that it was then that the Sanhedrin no longer met in the Hall of Hewn Stones. The Hall of Hewn Stones was this beautiful chamber laden with marble, just a spectacular place of adjudication. And that was the place where they adjudicated capital punishments. But Rome took that away from them. And so it was said at that time, woe unto us, the scepter has departed from Judah. Now, you know that's a reference to Genesis 49:10. If the scepter departs from Judah, it must mean that the ruler to whom the obedience of the peoples is, and to whom the right of leadership, both the judgeship and the kingship is, that he would have had to come already, right? Because it won't depart until he comes. So they come, Agrippa comes, Bernice comes, and I don't think I'll bore you with all the how to get in the office. All right. Agrippa II tries to keep the Jewish people from revolting, but he is unsuccessful. Right, and during the War of 66 to 70, he was on the side of Rome, and he later is confirmed a king. The Jewish sources says he had two wives. We don't really know. Josephus doesn't have any mention of that. But clearly, with Agrippa II was Bernice, and his sister, 1 year younger than himself. And she had been engaged to one Marcus, who was the nephew of the philosopher Philo. And anybody that's read Philo knows that Philo's job was to present Judaism to a Hellenistic audience, which he did. Then she was married to her uncle Herod, right? But on his death, she came to live with her brother Agrippa. It's a soap opera. These are mini soap operas, and they might down the road make good miniseries, right? Soap opera miniseries. So rumors of the incestuous relationship flourished in Rome and in Israel. In an effort to silence them, she marries one King Polemo of Cilicia in 63. 66, she returns to live with her brother. She became Titus's mistress. And at the close of the Roman war in Israel in 75, she goes to Rome to live with him. Her relationship with Titus, of course, is a public scandal, and he was forced to send her away at the end. Titus becomes emperor. Titus won the war of the Jewish revolt and there in Israel. Bernice returned once more to Rome. He was obliged to have nothing to do with him. He was the emperor, and she returns to Israel. This is all in the Roman histories, easy to find online, easy to find in the library. Verse 14, and as they stayed there many days, Festus laid Paul's case before the king, saying, there is a man left prisoner by Felix. So Agrippa II does not rule over Judea. He's appointed by Claudius, like his uncle Herod, right? Before him to be the curator of the temple. He has the power to depose and appoint the high priest, and is responsible for preserving the temple's treasury and the priestly vestments. The Talmud records that his mother, Cypros, took a profound interest in the Jewish religion, and some of this interest may have rubbed off on him. So Agrippa II is in fact looked upon by Rome as an authority of the Jewish religion, and probably it was for this reason that Festus broached the subject with Paul's case when Agrippa visited him. It was also a great political move to move him on to the next person, right? Chapter 25 and verse 15 and following. And when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders and the Judeans laid out their case against him, asking for a sentence of condemnation against him. I answered them, and it was not the custom of the Romans to give up anyone before the accused met the accusers face to face and had opportunity to make his defense concerning the charge laid against him. So when they came together here, I made no delay, but on the next day took my seat on the tribunal and ordered the man to be brought. When the accusers stood up, they brought no charge in this case of such evils as I supposed. Rather, they had certain points of dispute with him about their own religion and about a certain Yeshua, Jesus, who was dead, but whom Paul asserted was alive. Being at a loss how to investigate these questions, I asked whether he wanted to go to Jerusalem and to be tried regarding them. But when Paul had appealed to be kept in custody for the decision of the emperor, I ordered him to be held until I could send him to Caesar. Okay, so Festus gives Agrippa the whole shmagegi, right? The whole story here. He confronts him with his case. Basically, Festus is shrugging his shoulders. He says he's totally inadequate to deal with this situation, and he's prepared to accede to the Sanhedrin's request. But Paul objected. He asked for Caesar and to be adjudicated by Caesar. Now that's what he's going to do. Right? So then Agrippa said to Festus, verse 22, I would like to hear the man myself tomorrow. And he said, you will hear him. So this stirs Agrippa's interest. He asked to hear Paul for himself. The Greek is interesting. Normally, Greek verbs have the person, like I did this, I want to do this, I will do this, I is in the word. But the pronoun is also used in conjunction with that. So when the pronoun and the verb with its construction of the person and the number, grammatically, when both of those are used, it's made for emphasis. So he's saying, I myself wish to hear him. Okay? I'm not going to go by what anybody says, including you. I myself wish to hear him. All right. So this is a real, of course, Festus is only too happy. He's delighted. It's going to be out of my hands. All right. All right. So that's what's going to happen. Paul is going to have a defense before Herod Agrippa II, and we're going to see what happens there. So, verse 23. So on the next day, Agrippa and Bernice came with great pomp, and they entered the audience hall with the military tribunes, and the prominent men of the city. Then at the command of Festus, Paul was brought in. So great pomp. They're accompanied by high-ranking officers, leading people of the city. Uh, Romans did this very well. They were of high rank, especially. They knew how to come in elegantly and prominently and boldly and intimidatingly, right? We see Agrippa's royal robes. Bernice has this beautiful finery. There's military and civil dignitaries. This would frighten the normal individual. And Paul, after the processional, Paul is brought in to the situation. Verse 24, and Festus said, King Agrippa, and all who are present with us, you see this man about whom the whole Jewish people petitioned me, both in Jerusalem and here, shouting that he ought not to live any longer. Of course, it's an exaggeration, isn't it? It's not all the Jewish people, right? It's the leadership and those people that they stirred up and that we're connected with, both in Jerusalem and here. Okay, so you got to take care of this. You don't want to offend all the Jewish people there and here, shouting that the man ought not to live any longer. But I find that he had done nothing deserving death. And as he himself appealed to the emperor, I decided to go ahead and send him. But I have nothing definite to write to my lord about him. Therefore, I brought him to you all, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that after we've examined him, I may have something to write. To whom? To the emperor. For it seems to me unreasonable in sending a prisoner not to indicate the charges against him. Well, he knew what the charges were against him, but he wanted Agrippa's stamp, somebody who was, let's say, more authoritative, somebody maybe he could blame. Well, King Agrippa, agrees with me, and King Agrippa is the one who signs the papers and so forth and so on. So Festus, he turns to all of the folks, and he says, "You see this man, right?" So a couple of subtle touches here. Emperor Sebastos is found here and in verse 21. And it was first conferred on Octavian and the adopted heir of Julius Caesar by the Senate in 27. At that time it denoted one who is augmented or lifted above other mortals and was restricted to the reigning emperor, sometimes his wife, right? The addition of Lord or Kyrios, His Majesty, began at the time of Nero, about 54 CE, and the use increased until it became very, very common in the latter first and early second century, so especially under the reign of Trajan. I'm ready for my cough. So, yeah. All right. So Agrippa said to Paul, now we're in chapter 26, verse 1. So we're kind of zooming along pretty good here, right? So Agrippa said to Paul, you have permission to speak for yourself. Then Paul stretched out his hand and made his defense. So Paul not enamored by the royalty and the military and so forth and so on. He knows that this is part of his expanded mission that will eventually place him in Rome, which is a good place for him because that's going to be the place where he's going to try to recruit funds to go to Spain to go. And I'll have something to say about that. Did Paul? That'd be a good research project. I think I've mentioned this before, just slightly in our study together, but maybe research a little bit. Did Paul actually go to Gaul? Did he accomplish his Western campaign, or was he detained? Was he stopped? Yeah, that'll be fun research for you. We'll maybe discuss that next. Probably discuss it next time. Okay, verse 2. I consider myself fortunate that it is before you, King Agrippa, that I'm going to make my defense today against all the accusation of the Judeans, especially because you are familiar with all the customs and the controversies of the Jews. Therefore, I beg you to listen to me patiently. So, form of flattery, that's normal in the legal way, and tries to ingratiate himself. But it happens to also be, in this case, true, unlike the untruths and other. When the Ananias' lawyer kind of exaggerated uh, before the court. I beg you to listen to me patiently, right? So he's going to defend himself, right, against the charge that he had transgressed Judaism somehow. My manner, verse 4, of life, and from my youth, spent from the beginning among my own nation and in Jerusalem, is known by all the Judeans. The leadership knows who I am. They have known for a long time, if they're willing to testify, that in accordance to the strictest party of our religion, I have lived as a Pharisee. And now I stand on trial because of my hope in the promise made by God to our forefathers, to which our 12 tribes hope to attain, as they earnestly worship night and day. And for this hope I am accused by the Judeans, O king. Why is it thought incredible by any of you that God raises the dead? I think we're going to stop there. We're real close to 8 o'clock anyway. And you have your homework. And let's see how Paul's defense ensues and what are his points. How does he speak specifically to his audience, specifically King Agrippa the second here? Okay, so we will see you next week. And it's not going to be too long down the road that we will be finished with the book of Acts, and we will do that. So we will see you Saturday, shall we? And come for our 10:30 service and participate with us. I think you'll really enjoy it. Okay. Till that time, shalom. Just by the way, our mailing address is 131 Forsyth Street, Norfolk, Virginia 23505. Our telephone number is 757-423-3440 if you want to contact us. You can also go to our website and make requests, find out all kinds of information. Okay. So we'll see you soon, hopefully. Okay. Shalom.